at the Otago University. We're thrilled to present an insightful lineup of talks today, and we're sure that they will leave you feeling inspired. Neurological research has made remarkable progress in recent times. Scientific and clinical researchers in New Zealand and around the world are identifying hopeful prospects for the prevention, treatment and one-day cures for the more than 1,100 brain diseases and disorders known to mankind. The Neurological Foundation is immensely proud to support this research, and to our supporters who are here today, we thank you for enabling this. Science has shown us that we can play a part in optimising our brain health, and today our first guest speaker will outline her learnings as a medical doctor and carer for her father who has dementia. Dr. Helena Popovic is a medical doctor, author, international speaker and leading authority on how to improve brain function and how our lifestyles impact our health and performance. Dr. Popovic's philosophy is that education is more powerful than medication, and she believes in slow aging despite fast living. Dr. Popovic is the author of the inspiring book, In Search of My Father. Dementia is no match for a daughter's determination. Her story is a warm and humorous account of how we can build a better brain at any stage of life. Her book is available for purchase after her presentation today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Helena Popovic to speak.
Thank you very much. Can I start with a quick question? Who here uses dental floss? Yes, great. Well, you're about to discover mental floss. How to clean the plaque from between your neurons. And watch, it works like this. This morning, I'd like you to consider the question, ask not what your brain can do for you, but what you can do for your brain. Because neuroscientists have discovered that we can dramatically improve our brain function at any age or stage of life. And we don't actually lose brain cells as we age, we can build them up. Now, when I spoke at a recent Australian government conference, and I made this promise, somebody immediately called out, we already use 100% of our brains at work. 5% on Mondays, 3% on Tuesdays, 4% on Wednesdays. Now, the human brain constitutes less than 2% of our body weight, yet it uses 20% of our blood supply, 20% of our energy, and it generates around 20% of our heat. Now, what that means in practical terms is that 1/5 of all the nutrients you took in at breakfast this morning went to your brain to supply it with essential raw materials. 1/5 of any junk you eat, which if you're here for Brain Day, clearly you don't, but hypothetically speaking, 1/5 of any junk we eat goes to our brains to jam its mental machinery, to slow down our cognitive processes. And 1/5 of all the calories we consume go to our brain to keep our cognitive wheels turning. Because in fact, thinking, planning, decision making are very high energy work and use up a lot of calories. So if you want to shed a few extra kilos, do some deep thinking. It burns calories. So the first thing to note about the brain is that it consumes a disproportionate amount of our resources, and that's something that we influence on a daily basis. Now, to kick things off, please turn to the person sitting next to you and give them your best smile. Having established immediate rapport, please give each other a genuine, heartfelt compliment. And if you're sitting there thinking, but the person next to me doesn't know me, don't worry, something pleasant about you has struck them or they wouldn't be sitting next to you. 10 seconds each. One compliment will do. Now, whenever you hear this tambourine, it means wrap up what you're doing, turn your attention back to me. If you don't wrap up what you're doing, I'll have to subject you to the mating call of the yellow-spotted Tasmanian wood duck. Trust me, this fine establishment doesn't want me to subject you to the mating call of the yellow-spotted Tasmanian wood duck. Now, what was that about? Why did I ask you to pay each other a compliment? Well, the second thing to note about the brain is that it loves suspense. Suspense has the effect of giving our brain cells a shake and saying, wake up, something really exciting is about to happen. So I'm not going to tell you why you did that until much later. In order to keep your brain cells in suspense and on alert for the answer, and therefore paying full attention to everything I'm saying, which of course you would anyway, because I have the most amazing news. And that is that in the last 10 years, neuroscientists have discovered more about how the human brain works than in all the thousands of years of brain research that's gone on in human history, which means our knowledge of the brain has absolutely exploded, and the information is life-changing. In fact, you're about to learn, who would have thought on this seemingly ordinary Saturday morning, that you would learn the most profound, pivotal, exciting, significant, crucial, critical, colossal, consequential, monumental, momentous, mind-blowing, awe-inspiring, enabling, empowering and far-reaching scientific discovery in the history of the human race. And that's no exaggeration. Because that discovery is that the brain, your brain, my brain, our brain, that 1.4 kilogram wrinkled lump of grey matter, can actually change its very own structure with each different activity it performs. Now just stop and think about that for a moment. The brain can change itself. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that the brain can grow new cells. It can make new connections between existing cells. It can establish whole new circuits. The brain can even change which cells perform which functions, and this has revolutionised stroke treatment. We used to think if somebody had a stroke and, say, paralysed half their body, if they didn't regain function after maybe 8 to 12 weeks of rehab, they never would. We now know that with prolonged intensive therapy lasting 6, even 12 months, called constraint-induced therapy, CIT, cells from undamaged parts of the brain can actually take over the lost functions and the person can move their limb again. And this has been unheard of. So it's like the brain actually reorganises itself, takes cells from another area, retrains them, and re-innovates the paralysed limb. Now this flies in the face of what we believe for most of human history, because we used to think that we couldn't repair any brain damage. And this remarkable ability of the brain to change itself is known as neuroplasticity. Hands up, how many of you have come across that term before? Yes? Great. I'll define it to make sure we're all on the same page. Neuroplasticity comes from two words. Neuron meaning brain cell, and plastic meaning malleable or able to be moulded. So what neuroplasticity means is that every single one of us can, and in fact does, influence how our own brain operates and develops throughout our entire life. Now, how many of you have actually heard, and this is what I was taught in medical school 20 years ago. I know, looking at me, you were thinking 2 years ago. But no, it's been 20. I was taught that the brain is the only organ that can't regenerate or repair itself. Have you heard that, you know, once you've had that alcoholic binge and destroyed brain cells, there's nothing you can do to get them back? Well, not to encourage the alcoholic binge, but we actually make roughly 5,000 new brain cells every day of our lives. When we're young, when we're old, and every age in between. And what's more, it's our lifestyles, our daily habits, our moment-by-moment choices and activities that actually influence how our brain cells function. Now, why is this so important? Because the brain runs the show. Yes, I know, every so often you meet someone in whom you really doubt that. But yeah, even in his case, I'm not being disrespectful to the men in the room, I'm just actually trying to rouse you a little. In fact, Robin Williams explained it when he said, God did so give men a brain and a penis, but only enough blood to supply one at a time. But as I said, I say some of these things to agitate you a little, because research has found that people learn best when they're in a state of mild arousal. So I'm trying to get you mildly aroused. Legally. But as I said, I want to reassure you, I'm extremely fortunate that I have the most wonderful man in my life. I have a man who is kind and caring. I have a man who loves kisses and cuddles. And I even have a man who cooks and cleans. How lucky am I? Especially as I have a way of making sure these three men never meet. So, as I was saying, if we can boost our brains, we can boost every aspect of our lives. We can think better, work better, create better, relate better, learn better, and achieve far more than we ever thought possible. And very importantly, we can significantly reduce our risk of Alzheimer's disease and all the other dementias as well. Just so that we're all on the same page, dementia is an umbrella term for a whole range of brain diseases that cause progressive mental decline, usually affecting memory, ability to learn, social skills. So there's probably about 100 different types of dementia. But the one you'll have heard of most often is Alzheimer's disease, because it accounts for about 60% of cases. The second most common type of dementia is vascular dementia, which is most commonly seen after a stroke. And then there's a whole range, and that's about 15%. And we've now discovered that a significant risk can be reduced through our lifestyles. That it is as much a lifestyle-based disease as heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and all these things are risk factors. So that's what I'm going to answer today. What can we do to reduce our risk? And it starts by understanding that the brain behaves like a muscle. The more actively we engage our brains, the more different ways we use our brains, the bigger, the more complex, and the more effective they can become. Now here's something fascinating. The brains of wild animals are 15 to 30% larger than the brains of their tame domestic counterparts. Why? What is it about being wild that boosts their brains? And does it apply to humans? Probably not in that case. But if we all got wild, would it boost our brains? The short answer is yes. There's a lot we can learn by observing wild animals. And before I elaborate, I just want to give you a little bit more of my background. As Annabelle said, I'm a medical doctor, and I've been doing research on boosting the brain for more than a decade. And when I first graduated from medical school, I was really keen on being a psychiatrist. But 3 months into my psychiatry career, I had a profound realisation that I would end up being a patient myself if I stayed with it. So I switched to sexual health, a logical choice since I knew nothing about sex and I figured I could learn a few things, which I did. I then cut out a niche, so to speak, doing vasectomies. That was the nearest thing to psychiatry, before I took up a specialty in lifestyle-based diseases, which actually account for over 80% of cases presenting to GPs. Think about that. 8 out of 10 visits to the doctor could be prevented if we made better lifestyle choices. And it was then that I became passionate about boosting the brain, because I experienced firsthand how education is more powerful than medication, and how boosting the brain can take people's health, their learning and their performance to a whole new level. So that is what I'm going to answer this morning. What can we do to boost our brains so that we perform at our peak on a daily basis, so that we tap into brain potential we never knew we had, and so that we stay as sharp at 90 as we were at 30. And it's all wildly exciting, because for so long we've lived under 2 very disempowering delusions. The first one is that the brain we're born with we're stuck with. That's a myth. And the second one is that mental decline with age is inevitable. And it's not. Consider this. Have you heard of architect Frank Lloyd Wright? Yes, he designed the Guggenheim Museum in New York at the age of 90. Benjamin Franklin invented bifocal glasses at age 78. Eleanor Benz, a 90-year-old Chicago woman who had to leave school during the Great Depression, went back to school in her 90s and attained her diploma with 37 great-grandchildren to cheer her on. And Julia Britton, at age 97, was still a highly successful Australian playwright and had 3 plays produced in January 2009. Who here has had 3 plays produced? Excellent. Then that's something you have to look forward to, because that level of mental functioning isn't restricted to a few genetically lucky individuals. It's possible for every single person in this room. How? By following 20 fundamental brain boosting principles. Now I know you're only supposed to give people 5 take-home messages, but I can see you are smart, switched on and savvy. You'll thrive on 20. So are we ready for them? 1 person. Good. For you. Brain booster number 1. This is probably the most important, so I'll spend the longest time on it. It's get an attitude. Oh, sorry, I missed one slide. It's get an attitude. Now, we all have an attitude. So what does that actually mean? Neuroscientists ask the question, is there an attitude, a prevailing way of thinking that actually boosts brain function? And they found that there was. And the attitude they found was most effective was to have a can-do attitude. And the best way to have a can-do attitude is to simply cut that 4-letter word out of your vocabulary. And that word, of course, is can't. Exactly. C-A-N'-T. Because the word can't actually chokes our brains. It's like putting the brain in a straitjacket or giving the brain a restraining order. Now, I know that sounds extremely simplistic because we tell our children, you know, there's no such thing as can't when they don't want to do something we want them to do. But the fact is, neuroscientists have discovered that the human brain is highly sensitive and actually responsive to language. And the words that we use actually instruct our brains what to focus on and notice in our environment. You see, we don't see with our eyes. We actually see with our brains. And it's our language, our conversations, our self-talk, our beliefs, our expectations create a filter through which we see the world. So if I predetermine that I can't do something, I literally close off my ability to see how it can be done. I just don't notice when an opportunity presents itself that would help me solve the problem. You might have experienced this. You walk in on someone who's really flustered and anxious and say, look, I can't do this. And you look around and you say, well, have you tried this? And they think you're a genius. How did you see that when I didn't? Because we create our own state of mind blindness when we talk ourselves into not being able to do something. And it isn't only the word can't, it's all the euphemisms we have for can't. It's impossible. I'm not made for this. It's too hard. I'm too old for this. The brain actually soaks up on the words and delivers on them. But if you let go of limiting beliefs, suddenly we can actually achieve so much more. Now, this is such an important concept. I'd like to have somebody help me demonstrate this. Perhaps a big, strong, handsome man would like to come up here for a moment. I'm spoilt for choice, so please. Would you like to? You're sitting at the front. It's the least distance. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, you don't have any shoulder injuries, do you? No. No? Okay. Good. And what's your name?
Norman.
Norman. Thank you very much, Norman. Okay. This is what we're going to do. All you need to do is hold your arms out wide, stay strong, and stop me pushing your arms down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now before I do that, and I want you to stand there already, strong, I would like you to say 10 times out loud so everyone can hear you, I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong, and think of a time you were strong. So go, 10 times, I'm strong. Let them all know.
I'm strong, 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 I'm strong.
You're strong. Norm is strong. All right, roll your shoulders. We're going to try that one more time. Nothing's going to change. Just hold your arms out wide. Stay strong. But this time, the only difference is I'd like you to say out loud, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. And think of a time you might have been weak. Now, being a man, I know you were never weak. But think of a time when maybe you were a bit weak. Say that out loud 10 times. But stay strong in your body. So the only thing that's changing is what you're saying. Go for it.
I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak.
What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
And our language does affect our physiology. Try this on each other during the break, or when you go home if you have children. Do it with your children. It's a fabulous lesson to learn early in life that when they come home and say, I can't do maths, that actually affects their performance. Thank you very much indeed. I'll explain in a moment why that works, but I just want to tell you a story about a Sydney psychologist, Dr. Timothy Sharp, that demonstrates this. His family came from rural Europe, and one day they were all out at the markets when a delivery of chickens arrived at their door. And there was no one home, so they just left the chickens in a flimsy old crate, and by the time the family got home, all the chickens had escaped. Not a feather left. So they spent the whole afternoon racing around town looking for these chickens. And grandfather was not happy, so he rings the chicken supplier and he says, listen mate, or whatever the European equivalent of listen mate would have been. He says, don't do something so irresponsible again. You left livestock on our front door. We've wasted the whole afternoon looking for them, and we've only managed to retrieve 11 of them. And the chicken supplier said, well, that's not too bad. We only delivered 6. You know, so if you don't know what to expect, you might surprise yourself. And I had a personal experience of this several years ago climbing Mount Kinabalu in Malaysian Borneo. Has anyone climbed Mount Kinabalu? It's isn't it a wonderful brain and body boosting experience? I'll describe the experience for you. Mount Kinabalu is more than 4,000 metres high. It takes at least 2 days to climb, and you have to go up with a guide. The Malaysian authorities won't let you go up by yourself. I'll spare you the altitude sickness, the frostbitten fingers and the screaming thighs, but suffice to say, I eventually made it. And it is the most exhilarating feeling. You're sitting on top of this mountain, high above the clouds, looking down on the world. And as I was there with my guide, I noticed a group of climbers tackling a ridiculously steep-looking slope, probably about close to 90 degrees. And I thought, well, that's just madness. And I turned to my guide and I said, who are they? I said, are they crazy or do they have a death wish? I said, thank goodness you didn't take me up that way. That is way too hard. I never would have made it. And he looked at me and he said, I did take you up that way. You just didn't realise how steep it was because you were on it. And I thought, really, if you'd have flown me up the day before and said, you're climbing that, I would have said, I can't do that. I'm just here for a holiday. So never think you can't do something just because it looks hard. Take the first step and you'll be amazed at how far you can get. Remember the words of Henry Ford. If you think you can do a thing or if you think you can't do a thing, either way, you're right. Now, I tried this concept with my father because at home, my mother died 4 years ago, and I then moved in to look after my father who had vascular dementia. He's still alive, by the way, and I am still looking after him. And what I found the most challenging thing wasn't the memory loss. His short-term memory is about 5 minutes. But it wasn't that. It was the fact that anything I asked him to do, he'd say to me, oh, I can't do that, I'm too old. I can't hang up the washing, I'm too old. I can't wash the dishes. Your mother never asked me to wash the dishes. Well, guess what? Things were going to change. And no amount of cajoling or coaxing was working, so I thought I'd try something else. One day I came to the kitchen table and I put down 2 jars, 2 glass jars. And I said, right, Dad, that is your can-do jar, not candy jar, but can-do jar, and that's my can-do jar. Whenever the word can't comes out of your mouth, you have to put a gold coin in my jar. And if I ever say can't, I'll put a gold coin in your jar. And when my jar gets full of your money, I get to spend your money. Now, I wasn't sure how this was going to go because, as I said, he doesn't remember instructions. But I can say I've done a lot of exercises to boost his memory. And do you know what the most powerful thing to boost memory is? Money. You'll be amazed at how that man's language is cleaned up. But most importantly, his ability to do things has gone up. So I invite you to have can-do jars in your home as well. Now, I can see some of you looking at me thinking, but hang on, that's all very well, but it leaves a vacuum in my vocabulary. What am I supposed to do during those frustrating moments when things aren't going to plan? Excellent question. It brings us to the second brain booster, to get curious. Albert Einstein observed, curiosity has its own reason for existence, and neuroplasticity has shown us what that reason is. Curiosity actually keeps our brains sharp and active and alive. And curiosity puts demands on our brains to get creative and to find solutions. So what that means is, from now on, if ever you feel like saying the word can't, swap it with the word how, not with the word can, because when we just do positive thinking and I can do this, part of us still doesn't believe it. But neuroscientists have found that when we change linguistic categories, so we go from a statement, I can't, and we turn it into a question, how can I? It actually activates different parts of our brains and it changes our focus because we're now even unconsciously looking for solutions. So try this exercise. Whenever you feel like saying, I can't do this, say, how can I do this? I can't get the kids to clean up their room. How can I get the kids to clean up their room? I can't get through to him. How can I get through to him? Your focus will change. What will happen is you'll be going about your day, something will be playing on the radio, and suddenly they say something that is exactly what you needed to hear. Or you'll be reading the paper and an article jumps out at you and you think, that's exactly what I was looking for. And it's not magic. It's a shift in focus, and it's amazing what we pick up from our environment when that's what we're focused on. And it's something that happens in our lives all the time. Who here has ever bought a car? Yes, you've had that experience. Now, you do weeks of research to make sure it's the exact right make, model, colour, personality car just for you. And you think it's a little bit unique. And the moment you drive it out of the car yard, what happens? It's the most common car on the road. That's an example of we see that which we focus on. Now, this is a really important concept. So I'd like you to turn to the person sitting next to you again. If they gave you a dud compliment, turn to the person on your other side. And share with them something in your life that you'd like to achieve or wanted to do, but you've caught yourself thinking or saying, I can't. And just make the promise that from now on, you'll swap the word can't from the word how, and watch what happens. But just share that with the person next to you. Feel free to continue that conversation after the break, and next time you run into that person, check on their progress. If they've changed their language, they will have changed their life. Remember the words of Michelangelo, the greatest risk a person can take is not to aim too high and miss, but to aim too low and hit. Aim high, ask how, your brain will find a way to get you there. The third brain booster is drink to your health, but no more than that. Researchers found that people who consume more than 14 alcoholic drinks a week, that's only an average of 2 a day, have considerably smaller brain volumes, and even volumes related to vasectomized parts, than people who consume a lot less. And there's a direct linear relationship. The more you drink, the more you shrink. Now sadly, the effect of alcohol on women is even greater than on men. Not only is there more brain shrinkage for the same volume consumed, but a woman who has just over 1.5 alcoholic drinks a day, and 1 drink is 10 grams of alcohol. So 1.5 drinks would be 150 millilitres of wine. So any more than that, and there's a 24% increased risk of breast cancer. And in Australia, about 1 in 7 breast cancers are attributed to excessive alcohol consumption. So I know I'm meant to be talking about brains, not breasts, but it's a really important thing to be aware of. The message is not teetotalerism, by the way. It's just to keep drinking to a safe level. For men, 14 a week. For women, 10 a week. And whatever you do, don't have all 10 on the one night, or you'll feel like this. Binge drinking is the worst thing we can do for our health. And also, the brain performs better if you abstain from alcohol for 24 hours prior to anything that requires sharp mental acuity. So next time you've had a really hard day and just want to collapse on the couch with a glass of wine, crack open a handful of walnuts instead. Why walnuts? Exactly, walnut, very good. Walnuts are a rich source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for optimal brain and heart health. And just a handful a day, and Dad gets a handful of walnuts a day with his morning medications, are a quick, easy, tasty way to boost your brain and even help ward off depression. And I don't have shares in a walnut farm. Now, for those of you who don't eat nuts, no need to panic. There are plenty of other sources of omega-3s, namely linseeds, flaxseed oil, chia seeds, soybeans, dark leafy greens, and your cold water deep sea fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, tuna. So I have advised that they serve sardine and spinach sandwiches at morning tea and lunch today for a top brain boosting meal. As for a brain boosting breakfast, have some fruit. Researchers have also found that eating a fruit salad or a variety of fruits for breakfast is associated with better mental functioning than just a piece of toast or a cup of coffee. Now, you can still have your skinny soy decaf organic fair trade latte as well, but just add some fruit to your morning routine. It doesn't matter what fruit. You can't have too much fruit. Your bowels will tell you if you've had too much fruit. But the brain is particularly partial to blueberries. We're not sure why, possibly the antioxidants, but blueberries, again, Dad receives a handful of blueberries with his morning medications as well. But the best rule of thumb is to get colourful. Put as many different coloured fruits and vegetables on your plate at every meal, because each different colour tends to represent a different nutrient, and we need all of them. And by fruit and colourful, I don't mean Fruit Loops. Now, speaking of mornings, how many of you here regularly exercise of a morning? Oh, good half. Excellent. So the rest of you obviously exercise in the evening. Great to hear. The point to know about the brain and exercise is that our brain operates at its absolute best in that first hour after we engage in any sort of physical activity. So even just 20-30 minutes before an important meeting or a brainstorming session or something that's mentally taxing like IKEA furniture assembly, go for a 20-30 minute brisk walk or move around some way, you'll perform measurably better. I could spend the whole hour just talking about the positive effects of physical exercise on the brain. We've known for a long time we need it for our bodies, but it's even more essential for the brain. Just 30 minutes of exercise every second day cuts our lifetime risk of dementia in half. Bump it up to 30 minutes of exercise every day, you also halve your risk of a stroke. A single 20-minute exercise session on a treadmill was found to boost language learning. They did a study in Germany. Boosted language learning by 20% just by, lightly walking or jogging on a treadmill. A Japanese study found that a single 20-minute exercise session boosted creative thinking and helped problem solving. And an hour of exercise a day is as powerful as Prozac in the treatment of depression. But that has to be a serious hour, has to be every day, and you have to alternate aerobic exercise, so that's cardiovascular workout, with some weight training. And that's a magic combination for both depression and diabetes. So now, why does exercise have such a powerful effect on the brain? The first thing is it does deliver extra nutrients and oxygen to the brain, but even more powerfully than that, it actually stimulates the brain to produce new brain cells through a chemical called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. I think we only discovered this in the last few decades, that whenever we exercise, we produce this chemical. And this chemical is like a fertiliser for brain cells. The more we exercise, the more BDNF we produce. The more BDNF we produce, the more connections we make between brain cells, and even the more new brain cells we make. So, and the third thing that exercise does is that whenever we start to exercise, we produce a cocktail of feel-good chemicals. Serotonin, endorphins, noradrenaline, dopamine, oxytocin. Yum, we love those chemicals. And a magic number has been found that you only need to move for 12 minutes and you start to produce these feel-good chemicals. So if you're just not feeling well, or if you're in a sad or bad mood or grumpy, or have had an frustrating call with your internet service provider, just move around for 12 minutes, your mood will lift and you're more likely to be able to solve the problem. And I have a case study to prove this. A man came to me recently and he said, look, my wife has said it's either Prozac or divorce. He said, I'm just in such a bad, angry mood and I'm so stressed when I come home from work, I literally kick the dog. What can I do? I said, let's try an experiment. I said, from now on, when you come home from work, park the car, but don't go into the house until you've done at least a 12-minute brisk walk. And I explained why he had to hit the 12-minute mark. I said, you can go for longer, but no less. And so he did. So Saturday he did his 12-minute walk and he said, I feel so much better after the 12 minutes. I thought I may as well do another 12 minutes and get my daily dose in. And he said, change was remarkable. He actually walked in feeling good, happy, a good human being. And everyone in the house noticed the difference, except he didn't tell his wife what he was doing. So she noticed that he would arrive home, park the car, disappear for half an hour, and come back slightly flushed and in a good mood. It took him a while to convince he was walking, not womanising. Such is the power of exercise. Now, just to make the point, 100 years ago, I wouldn't need to be talking about exercise because Australians and New Zealanders were walking roughly 16 kilometres a day just in the course of their lives. But when you look at our lives today, we've engineered movement out of our lives. Think about this. We invent elevators so that we don't have to walk upstairs, and then we invent gyms and fill them with machines called Stairmasters so we can pay to walk upstairs. Why don't we just walk upstairs in the first place? This has really hit home to me. About 2 decades ago, we had a family stay with us from rural India, and they'd never seen an elevator before until we took them to a upmarket department store called David Jones. I don't know if you have them here. But anyway, we're in the store, and the mother was paying for something, and the father and the son were standing with me and by the lifts, and the lift doors opened, and a frail little old lady walked in, and the lift doors closed, and a moment later they reopened, and a tall, blonde, beautiful woman walked out. And the father just looked at his son and said, quick, go get your mother. Now, people often ask me, what's the best exercise? The bottom line is any exercise that you enjoy doing. Dancing is fabulous because it's both mental, social and physical stimulation. Martial arts is great for people with ADHD, but the bottom line is anything that you enjoy doing and that's movement is going to benefit you. Now, the next brain booster, just for a moment, could I invite you all to stand up? Just and have a little think about this. What do you think the next, having just asked you to stand, what might the next brain booster be? Get up out of your chair. Now, I'm sad to report that Australians are the leading researchers on sitting because we have so many willing subjects. And what we found is that people who sit for longer than 11 hours a day have a 40% increased risk of early death compared to people who sit less than 4 hours a day. And people who have office jobs in a corporate environment sometimes do sit for that long. People who sit for longer than 8 hours a day compared to 4 hours have a 15% increased risk of early death. Now, the sad news is, even if you flog yourself at the gym for an hour a day, it doesn't counteract the effects of prolonged sitting. But the good news is, all it takes to counteract the effects of prolonged sitting is to get standing for 2 minutes every 20 minutes. And now, when I know I've got a lot of desk work, I actually put a little timer on my desk to go off every 20 minutes, reminds me to stand up. Now, it doesn't have to be wasted time. You can use that time to make a phone call. That's why they're called mobile phones. Just, read something simple, or even just to have a stretch. You don't have to do vigorous exercise for 2 minutes. You just have to wander around, or even just, if you're confined to a wheelchair, just massage your muscles. Because what's wrong with prolonged sitting is that we have no muscle contraction, no electrical activity going through our legs. And when that happens, we don't clear glucose from our bloodstream and we don't clear fats from our bloodstream. So they stagnate and can cause damage to our blood vessels. And research at the moment is looking at people with diabetes. It appears early promising results have shown that just the best thing somebody with diabetes can do is rigorously stand up every 2 minutes, stand up every 20 minutes for 2 minutes, and it's been found to actually reduce the need for medication because that helps people clear glucose from their bloodstream. Thank you. You can now sit down. You've had your 2 minutes. There's a program on Catalyst. If you Google a program, Catalyst August 2012, you'll be able to see all the research on that. Now, the next brain booster is a great one. It's simply to have a laugh a day, to get laughing. Because laughter has a very similar effect on the brain as does exercise. All the things I said about exercise apply to laughter. And laughter has in fact become a serious science. The science of laughter is gelotology. And the use of laughter in therapy is gelototherapy. And we found laughter boosts our immune system. And laughter actually reduces our risk of having a heart attack. And if you've had a heart attack in the US, along with your medications and lifestyle prescription, they will tell you to watch 30 minutes of comedy a day because you're 5 times more likely to be alive a year later if you laugh every day. Such is the power of laughter. Laughter also raises our pain threshold because it raises our endorphin levels. So scientists have found that if you're about to experience something painful, if you laugh first, it'll hurt less. Try this before going to the dentist. And it does actually work. I've actually tried this as well with my vasectomy patients. Before I do a vasectomy now, on a patient under local anaesthesia, that is, the man is wide awake, but I numb the area I'm working on, before I insert the needle into the scrotal sac, I ask the man to laugh. Guess what? He does laugh. I suppose under the circumstances, a man would do anything I asked. But let's face it, if it's possible to get a stark naked man to laugh when I'm holding a needle in one hand and the crown jewels in the other, possible to laugh in any situation. I spoke in Canada last year, and when I said this, somebody said, "Oh, you know we're ice hockey mad," which they are. And he said, soon after the introduction of ice hockey in the late 1800s, they quickly found that they were getting a lot of injuries. So they developed these protective caps, which they would wear over the crown jewels to protect them from flying balls. What amazes me is that it took them another 100 years to think of wearing a helmet to protect their brains. A smile a day changes our brain chemistry in a positive way. You know, when we smile, it also expands what we can see in the world. It actually helps with creative thinking and pattern recognition. So even just smiling is a benefit. Now, the next brain booster, something that we can learn from wild animals, is to get a change of scene. The best thing to spark fresh thinking is to go outside, do something different, experience a different environment. But just as a regular part of our lives, you know, monotony and sameness are poison to the brain, whereas newness and stimulation are one of the best things to keep our brains healthy. And the most powerful thing of all is to spend some time in nature. Nature is a great healer. When we're stressed, nature calms us down. When we're tired, nature actually restores our concentration. And they've actually compared studies. If somebody's mentally fatigued, if they walk in an urban environment, that helps, or a shopping mall, that helps, but it helps even more if you take a walk in nature. Again, sadly, the front page of an Australian newspaper a few months ago was Australians are suffering from a new disorder, NDD, Nature Deficit Disorder. Because we're not getting outdoors even for 10 minutes a day to get our daily dose of sunshine. And sunshine is our best source of vitamin D, and low vitamin D levels have also been found to increase the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So just 10 minutes a day without sunscreen, middle of the day, that's all you need. Don't get sunburnt, but we still need our sun. And even just having good lighting, having good light bulbs is really important if you're working in an area. Dim lights, dim cognition. And even in aged care residences, just changing the light bulbs so they get better lighting during the day improves alertness and engagement of the residents there. The next brain booster, this is another one that halves our lifetime risk. It's to get challenged. And by challenged, I mean engage in lifelong active learning. If you retire from your work, don't retire from learning, because that has been found. People who continue to learn new things, and it's whatever is a challenge for you. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be learning a foreign language. That's actually found to delay the onset of dementia by 4.5 years. A musical instrument, an art, a craft, a skill, a sport, Sudoku, crossword puzzles. Whatever it is that challenges you, it's going to be beneficial. Now with Dad, I've tried a whole range of things, and the change has been remarkable. He now beats me at darts because he plays with all the other carers that come along. And that's something he could never do before. Jigsaw puzzles is one of his favourites because it helps him concentrate. For him, that was a challenge. And it was wonderful. The other day, he came racing to the kitchen to me. He said, "Guess what? I finished that last jigsaw puzzle all by myself. And it took me less than 1 hour. And on the side of the box, it says 4 to 5 years. Dad can be very switched on sometimes. We take a walk outside in a park close by just about every day. And it was just before Christmas last year when we were walking through, and he was looking down and he noticed something in the grass, and so he picked it up, and it was a wallet. So we opened the wallet to see if we could give it back to someone, and inside this wallet was $800 cash. And Dad got really spooked and he said, "Ooh, what do you think I should do?" And I said, "Dad, you know what you should do. You know, if it happened to you, what would you like someone to do for you?" I said, "No, better still. What if I, your loving daughter, lost her wallet and it had $800 cash in it? What would you like someone to do for me?" And he paused and he thought about it for a while, and then he gave me his warm, wise, fatherly look, and he said, "I'd like someone to teach you a lesson you'd never forget." I assure you we gave the wallet back. Reading is a great brain booster, and especially reading Shakespeare, Tolstoy, classic complicated literature and poetry. When researchers have scanned people's brains, they find more of our brains light up, more parts of the brain light up, and our brains are more active when we're reading complex literature versus, you know, easy literature or comics, so there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you're really busy and you say, "I don't have time for a new language or a musical instrument right now in my life," that's fine. Even just getting out of your comfort zone will make a difference. By that I mean, take your normal daily routines and do them a bit differently. So, for instance, you might wake up in the morning and have a shower with your eyes closed, because then you're forced to use senses you're not in the habit of using. Brush your teeth with the opposite hand to usual. Become ambidextrous, because suddenly then we have to focus on what we're doing and concentrate, and that will trigger new brain cells because we're using a side of the brain that we're not in the habit of using. Regularly speak to people you don't know. Forget stranger danger. It is really good for the brain to meet new people and to engage with them. If you drive to the same place every day, try and find a new route. Don't always go via the same route to the same place. Use your street directory rather than GPS so you don't lose navigational skills. Find a new word in the dictionary at the start of each week and weave it into your conversations. And even just listening to music that's different to what we're in the habit of listening to has the effect of boosting our brains. So you can thank your neighbours for their noise pollution if they are so inclined. Now, if you are super time poor, I have great news. You can do all of this in one hit. Find someone you've never met before. Take them home with you via a new route. Invite them to have a shower with you. With your eyes closed, so it's fine. Use your new word in conversation with them and have weird music playing in the background. Your brain will love it. And look, if you take yourself out of your comfort zone, anything is possible. Watch this. And as I said, they found that GPSs are not infallible, and London taxi drivers actually have much larger parts of their brains dedicated to navigation and spatial skills because they need to know their roads. So even simple things. Now, the next brain booster is counterculture, because we're obsessed with achievement and getting somewhere in the fastest possible way. But guess what? Get friendly with failure and get up after a slip up. Because only when we failed at something, and by that I mean we don't get it the first time, and we actually struggle to achieve it, so we fail and we don't get it and we fail again, and we finally reach it in the end, only then have we actually challenged ourselves enough to stimulate new connections between brain cells and even the formation of new brain cells. So if you're struggling with something, if you're striving, it's a good thing. They did a wonderful experiment with rats. They were all the same age, the same breed, fed the same food. Group number 1 were just given their food as usual, had a nice easy life. Group number 2 had to overcome obstacles to get to their food. So they struggled and sometimes they missed out on their food. And they continued this routine for 3 months. And after that time they scanned the rats' brains. And to their amazement they found that the rats that had to overcome obstacles to obtain their food had much bigger forebrains and ended up being much smarter rats than the rats that had just been given their food as usual. So it's actually, if you've had to overcome obstacles in your life, if you've struggled, you've actually built up brain cells and you're smarter than the person who's had an easy life. And if you think about it, there's actually no such thing as failure. Who watched that wonderful movie a few years ago, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel? Have you seen that? Wasn't it great? Superb life lessons. The one that was most memorable for me was there's a young hotel proprietor. Everything's always going wrong, so he's running around reassuring all his guests and he's saying, look, it's okay, it'll all work out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out, well then it's not the end. And now I adopt that philosophy for myself. If something hasn't worked out, if I haven't achieved something, well, it's not the end. I just keep going. I try another way. I ask for more help. I discover something new. So don't feel that, just because you're not making progress visibly, that it's not doing any good. It's that striving that actually then gives us a really great sense of mastery at the end. So just give things a go. The next brain booster is something totally different. Kick off your shoes and get barefoot. Because when we walk barefoot, our brain receives new stimulation through the soles of our feet. And if we never walk barefoot, we never get that stimulation. And sometimes, to some people, it's, we get frail and unsteady on our feet because our feet have been cocooned in shoes for 60, 70, 80 years of our life. So that's a nice one. Kick off your shoes, try different surfaces. Freshly mowed grass, squishy mud, running water, pebbles, and just really enjoy the experience. But I take no responsibility for cut or injured feet. You do this at your own risk. The next brain booster is something we all know, but sometimes we let slip, is to get a regular good night's sleep. The average New Zealander, I've looked at the statistics, accumulates about 2 weeks of sleep loss a year because of feeling pressure to get the work done regardless and to be available 24/7. And yet, after 17 hours of wakefulness, that's from 7 a.m. to midnight, after that time our brain operates as though we had a blood alcohol reading of 0.05%. That's above the legal limit for driving. In Australia at any rate, I think it's the same here. And when we're sleep deprived, our decision-making skills erode, we feel more stressed and fatigued, and even things that are fun aren't fun anymore. Especially if we start to accumulate sleep loss, we make stupid mistakes that we wouldn't otherwise make. So it's really important. And just be aware that between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, we are biologically programmed to have a nap. our brain waves slow down, our body temperature drops, we feel transiently sleepy and drowsy. We're more likely to make a mistake that time in the afternoon, we're more likely to have a car accident. So now I know that not everyone, works in an environment or where they can take a nap, but if you've got a receptive boss, suggest this. But at least just recognise in whatever sense, don't make your most challenging part of the day between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. And it is not related to a good night's sleep or not, and it's not related to what you had for lunch, it's just the way we're programmed, just something to be aware of. And countries where they have a siesta, when they compare other factors, that in itself helps prolong life, just having an afternoon nap. So there you go. The other thing that's related to this, now it's going to sound like a contradiction, by the way, from everything I've been saying this morning, because I've said, get out there, get adventurous, get stimulated. And now I'm going to tell you to get still, because stilling the mind is as powerful and important as stimulating the mind. What do I mean by stilling the mind? I mean, every so often, find a quiet place where you can just be and press the pause button on your mind chatter. Do you know what I mean by mind chatter? It's that little voice that starts the moment you wake up and doesn't stop till you go to sleep. It's that little voice that's saying, I could do with a cup of coffee now. Or if you've got a little voice in your head saying, I don't have a voice inside my head, that is the voice inside your head. And it's really rejuvenating to let that go sometimes, to just shut that down. Well, how do we do that? I'm going to give you an experience of it right now. Please take the palm of your hand and look at the palm of your hand as though you've never seen it before. Now, you can either focus on one point or scan your whole hand, but the important thing is try not to have a conversation in your head about what you're seeing. So if you've just noticed a really short lifeline, don't say to yourself, I'm going to die soon. Just let that go, and I'll keep quiet while you're doing that. So just look. Now close your eyes and listen to the sound of this bell. And when the sound subsides, just listen to the silence. Keeping your eyes closed, become aware of everything that your body is touching. Become aware of the clothes against your skin, the shoes around your feet, the chair against your back. Scan your body from top to toe and just become aware of everything you're touching. And now bring your attention to your breathing. Take a slow, deep, conscious breath all the way in. Feel it pass through your nostrils, down into your lungs. Feel your lungs expand and contract. Follow your next breath as well. Take one more conscious breath, and when you're ready, open your eyes. How many of you found that for at least some of that time you realised that you weren't thinking because you're either looking or listening or feeling or breathing? Can I have a show of hands? Excellent. It gets better and easier with practice, and that's what I call pressing the pause button, getting still on your thinking. I call them meditative moments. Now, meditation, formal meditation is fabulous for the brain, and that's a whole subject on its own. But even just taking these meditative moments throughout the day is enormously refreshing. If you feel mentally fatigued, this will spark you up. If you're feeling stressed, this will also calm you down. Because what you did was a bit like this. Imagine this bottle as your, this bottle with the water and sand as your mind. And the grains of sand is your thoughts. Okay, so this is your mind, this is your thoughts. Now, as you're going about your day, your thoughts are flying around in your mind all day, every day. It gets very full in there and can get murky and unclear. But when you allow your thoughts to settle, as you did just then, suddenly we create some space in our mind for fresh ideas. Suddenly there's some clarity there. There's room for our intuition, for our subconscious resources to come to the fore. When people say to me, I have no intuition, I just say to them, everyone has intuition. You're just making too much mental noise to hear it. So try this if you're mentally fatigued or stressed. It makes an enormous difference. Or even just throughout your day, a couple of times a day, or start your day with a meditative moment. You can do any one of those things, either looking or listening or feeling or breathing, or you can do all of them. Whatever works for you. Makes a remarkable difference to our lives. Whenever I do my little demonstration, I'm reminded of a school teacher I had in primary. One day she came in to talk about how to look after ourselves. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't eat chocolate or junk food. And to make her point, she brought 4 glass jars and she had a live worm in each jar. Now, over the first worm, she actually poured some alcohol. In the second jar, she lit a cigarette, threw it in, screwed the lid on. In the third jar, she got some chocolate, melted it, threw it over the top. And now over the 4th worm, she sprinkled it with soil. And then for half an hour, she talked about how to look after ourselves. And then at the end of class, she said, let's come and see what's happened to these worms. Well, no points for guessing. In the first jar, the worm in the alcohol was clearly dead. The worm in with the cigarette, also dead. The worm buried under the chocolate, dead. The only worm that was still alive was the one in the soil. So she said, okay, who here can tell me what's the lesson in this? And the girl next to me put her hand up and she said, I know, if you drink, smoke and eat chocolate, you'll never have worms. Okay, 3 more to go. Quick ones, but really important ones. This is also going to be a challenge in this multitasking world of ours. However, just to be aware that if you really want to be good at something, if you really want to learn something most effectively, do not multitask. Focus on one thing at a time. Because, remarkable as the human brain is, it is only designed to focus on one thing at a time. So if you're multitasking, your brain is forced to rapidly flick attention from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and then back to the first thing. In that process, we lose information, we get stressed, we start to feel overwhelmed, we make mistakes. Studies all around the world have found that we double the incidence of mistakes when we're multitasking and juggling a lot of things. I'm not saying we're not able to, we can do it, but we reduce our own effectiveness and our own performance. So it's something to be aware of. If you say, I've got a poor memory or I'm just bad at learning, make sure you shut out all distractions, put your full attention on the task, you will learn better and you will do whatever you're doing a lot better. The next brain booster is one that we instinctively know, and that is to get friendly. To maintain strong and meaningful social connections throughout our lives. That's the 3rd key to halving our risk of dementia. The first one was regular physical exercise, halves your risk. The second key was ongoing active learning and challenges, halves your risk. And the 3rd thing that halves our risk is to maintain meaningful friendships. Not Facebook friends, real friends. Nothing wrong with Facebook, but it isn't the same as feeling really connected with somebody and feeling a part of our community and contributing. We never lose our desire to feel a value to our fellow human being. Dad taught me this too. When Mum first died, I was taking to the opera and the ballet and museums and making sure he was stimulated. But he said, this is meaningless to me. I need to feel that I'm not a burden, that I'm actually contributing to people. So we started doing Meals on Wheels together. I was the driver, he was the runner. It made a profound difference. He suddenly felt that there was something that he was doing that was valuable and contributing to others. And now, a year later, he now does it with 97-year-old Eric. Eric's the driver, Dad's the runner. When I see them, I run. But they just work so well together, and it's just wonderful. And studies in Africa have actually found that women who take on volunteer work, who've had some cognitive decline, it actually improves blood flow. It changes blood flow in the frontal lobes, and it's actually found to reverse some of the changes seen in an aging brain. It is that powerful and important to feel connected and contributing. And the final brain booster is probably the most powerful of all. We've talked about omega-3s, we've talked about fruit and exercise and learning, but the most important thing of all is to get excited. Get enthusiastic, get passionate, do things you love, do things you're passionate about. Because excitement is so much more than just a feeling. Excitement produces electrical activity throughout the brain and gets us releasing some very powerful chemicals, among them adrenaline, which fires us up, which gives us strength, which improves our performance, acetylcholine, which helps us focus and consolidate the changes we make in our brain when we learn something new. So if you're excited about what you're learning, you'll learn it a lot better, or if you're enjoying it. And it releases dopamine, which is a feel-good chemical. So it means that the activity is self-rewarding. And that is why you paid each other a compliment at the start of this. Because whenever we receive a compliment and whenever we smile, we also release these same three chemicals. A little bit of adrenaline, dopamine, acetylcholine. And that is why you have been so fully focused and switched on for a whole hour and will remember everything that I've said this morning. So my overwhelming message is that we are all born with a far more capable, adaptable, opportunistic brain than we ever imagined. We are not passive victims of our genes. Our moment-by-moment choices boost our brain power, our longevity, our overall quality of life and our happiness. So I encourage you to get wild, to get playful, to get smart, and of course, to get my book.
Right. The good news now is we all get a chance to have an adrenaline burst by asking a question in front of all of these people. But please, one question per person, and please wait until you have the microphone. And after you've asked the question, if you can then hand the microphone back, that will get it rolling really quickly. Bridget's got a mic and I have, so I'll go to the back and Bridget will take the front and we'll alternate.
So, any questions? Yes, over here. This will be your exercise boost.
Hello there, that was a fantastic talk. Hello. Thank you. There's things on the internet about the importance of coconut oil, and there's also the recent research that came out that suggests that if you give a blood test to people, they might be short in 10 lipids if they are about to develop dementia. Mm-hmm. Do you have any opinions on those things?
Certainly the blood test sounds very promising, and it also indicates to us that dementia and Alzheimer's develop decades before the actual disease. So that's why the importance of you're never too young to start boosting your brain. We are cautiously optimistic. That's the latest scientists have said we're cautiously optimistic about coconut oil because we still haven't got enough numbers. The positive effects have been anecdotal, which means people have done it and observed, but it hasn't been measured formally. So all I can say is watch this space. I do try and throw some coconut oil in salad dressings for Dad just to see. It's early days. I wouldn't go overboard with the coconut. I wouldn't have more than a tablespoon a day, maybe 2, but no more than that, because it is still got a lot of saturated fat, and that can clog up our blood vessels. So we don't want the heart to die and the brain to go, because they both need to work. Thank you.
Question from the back?
Yes. If you just shout loudly, maybe.
Okay. I went to a laughter group recently in Dunedin.
Yes.
We're comprised of 98% women and 2% men. So, what would be your thoughts on that, please?
Women tend to be a little more proactive about their health. Men wait till it's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's just, I think it's a cultural thing. Men tend to sort of like, she'll be right, mate, and aren't as proactive about their health in general, I think. I don't know, maybe, men are always laughing at women anyway, so they don't need to go to a laughter group. But that's great. That's a great thing to do.
I want to know that I hear that most people only use 1/10 of their brain. Is that right?
No, that's not right. We may not use all our brain potential, but we certainly do use all of our brains. I don't know where that myth came from. It's a common one, and most people believe that. But no, we use way more than, we use all of our brains, definitely. And here.
I'd like to ask about vitamin B12,
yes.
B6 and folic acid, and what's the latest research about that?
They're all necessary. Vitamins, all the vitamins and minerals are necessary to maintain brain function. But vitamin B, B vitamins and folate definitely. But we haven't found that extra, more than the recommended daily average, has not found to be helpful, even though not having enough is detrimental. Does that make sense? So once you're having enough, so far we haven't found that eating more helps. And in fact, things like vitamin E, definitely don't eat more, because that has been found to have detrimental effects. Too much vitamin A too. So a healthy balance is what you need. On that subject, iron is very important. If you're a woman, make sure you're getting enough iron. Women need 18 milligrams of iron a day, and men need only 10. And that's really vital for optimal brain function, getting enough iron. And on the dietary question, I mean, there's more I could have talked about, but in this limited time, turmeric as a spice has been found to be really good as well. Black and green tea, they're all good things for the brain.
Thank you for your information on boosting our brain. But I think most of us will know of friends and relations, no matter how much they have been boosting their brain, yes, and they've got good lifestyle, they still develop a dementia. Could you make perhaps a wee comment on that thing?
Firstly, there are no guarantees in life. A small percentage of dementias are genetic and inherited. The most common one you'll probably know is Huntington's chorea, early onset Alzheimer's. These things are genetically determined. So what I'm about is maximising your chances. So the genes you have, get them working the best that they can. So it's all about risk reduction. There are no guarantees. And it's never one thing. I mean, I didn't talk about traumatic brain injury. That also increases somebody's risk. Smoking. Smokers are 70% more likely to get dementia than lifelong non-smokers. So there's a whole range of things that influence. And what I'm talking about is something that scientists have found we can build what's known as cognitive reserve. So even if you do have areas of the brain that are damaged or not working that well, or have had a compromised blood supply, the brain can sort of build circuits around that and try and compensate for some of the lost functions. So it's about maximising your chances of keeping your brain healthy. But just to reassure you, most are not inherited. So if you have a parent or grandparent that's had or has dementia or Alzheimer's disease, doesn't mean that you are necessarily any more likely to get it.
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
My question was very similar to the last one. In my family, my grandfather had early onset and my mother. So my two questions were, if you do boost your brain, is that going to help? And which was similar to the first question. And the other thing is, do you know anything of genetic testing?
Okay, you can genetically test for certain early onset dementias. The Huntington's chorea you can. The Alzheimer's, it's more a blood test, but it's not a genetic test. It's looking for markers, which are other chemicals that suggest you might be an increased risk. Regardless of the type of dementia, doing things to boost your brain will still help. Might push it along so you don't get it as early as you would, or you don't get it as severe as you would. So anything you do will help, even if it doesn't entirely prevent. The best thing is to go to your doctor and ask for what tests are available for the particular type of dementia that you're interested in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then this one here. Yes.
Yes, I'm going through one or two health challenges, and I've recently been through a brain scan and told I've yet to have a formal meeting to determine the outlines of it, but I've been told that I've got a shrinking brain, which is very common amongst ageing adults, but that mine is shrinking much more than other people's for a person of my age. Now, is it possible that cell regeneration can still occur with a person like me?
My answer is similar to the last one. I'm not sure about your specific condition. Obviously, you're quite unique.
Sure.
I still think whatever you're doing, look, there's no doubt about it that physical exercise helps the brain to produce chemicals that will help to boost new brain cell growth. Now, whether there is something in your brain that stops that, I don't know, but I still believe that everything I've said will at least go some way to helping.
Please have a comment. I've also been on statins for 12 years,
yes, I know.
And I just wondered what damage that's been doing, because
maybe some, maybe none. Everybody responds to medications differently. And we also know that really high cholesterol in midlife will increase the risk of dementia. So it's hard to say, you know, you weigh up the pros and cons. Would the high cholesterol have done more damage than the statins, or have the statins done more damage than the high cholesterol? It's early days to be able to answer that question specifically, and it's probably different for different individuals. There was a question in blue.
It's been answered. I just say I'm so impressed. My question's just been answered, but I'm so impressed with the way you've given this talk, with your use of aids and your humour, and it's just an inspiration to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I just want to add my thanks to Helen for her fantastic presentations. I'm Cliff Abram. I'm the director of the Brain Health Research Center here at the University of Otago. We're devoted to doing just the kinds of things and research that brings these aims of hers to the research world, and so that we can find out more about how these things actually operate in the brain, and what all these wonderful tips and activities that she recommends will do for the brain. In fact, if you do them, the brain outside will show you where you can get to. That's what you can aspire to. You have a giant brain. So once again, thank you very much, Helen, for a wonderful
pleasure.
Just before you go, I want to say a couple other things, and then I think we'll bring it back to the Neurological Foundation. First of all, the Brain Health Research Center is delighted to be assisting with the Neurological Foundation in hosting this Brain Day event. I hope you're aware what a wonderful job the Neurological Foundation does in raising money for research in the neurological disorders, and researchers here at our center and of course across the country benefit from the research grants that are provided by the Neurological Foundation. So we're very impressed and indebted to their efforts, and I hope you continue to support them. Today, there's a couple things, apart from the wonderful displays from the support groups up there. In sort of the back room, as it were, off here to this side, we have a couple other things you might be interested in. People from the School of Physiotherapy have a balance platform where you can test your balance if you like. People from our center have an EEG recording device there. If you want to get your brain waves read and you can look at them, you can as well. And we have a microscope there to show you some sections of cells and so forth from brain sections as well, if you wish to look at them. The other thing is that for those of you here in a professional capacity, we have a certificate of continuing education that you can get from Alexis there, who's standing back there by our display. You can go and get a certificate for your continuing